First thing we need to do is select the set driven key options. Make sure it's set from modeling to animation as far as the menu goes. Alright, so underneath key, the main menu up here at the top, we scroll down and you should see menu item that says set driven key. Then you click on set with these three little dots, meaning that it will open up the menu that we see here. Okay, so we have two sections. We have the driver and we have the driven. In our case here, the driver will be the ball. So we select the ball from the scene and then we hit load driver. So actually his name's Mr. X, so Mr. X will be the driver. The driven will be the door, which means the object that will be directly influenced by the driver. So in the driven section, we select the door and then we click load driven. Now you see all of the little attributes that you should become more and more familiar with now. We have translate X, Y, and Z, we have rotate X, Y, and Z, and we have scale X, Y, and Z. So the driven has the same thing, same set of attributes. So in our case here, what we're going to have happen is we're going to select the ball, and the ball translate Z because that's the path that it will be animated on. So the ball's movement along the Z axis, or translate Z, will directly influence the door. So within the driver section, we make sure that the ball or Mr. X is selected and then translate Z. These will directly influence the driven object, which is the door. Okay, so because the Z-axis, or as far as the ball goes, it's going to go along the Z-axis from this side of the screen, from this side of the screen, or this side of the scene to the other side of the scene. Now for the door, we'll want it to raise up and down, which means the door, the actions of Mr. X and translate Z will directly affect the door and translate Y. Now the second you select these coordinates in these two fields, you should see the option that says key. So with this scene setup, it says 120. I don't know. I guess I'll set this to 72 just to make it similar to the last exercise. Okay. So just like the previous exercise, I'm going to select frame 1. Okay, so at frame 1, the position of the ball or Mr. X will be here. And then I key Mr. X's position along the Z-axis and the door's position along the Y-axis. So I'm going to select key right here. Now that position has been keyed, I'm going to move the ball or Mr. X. While everything is still selected here, highlighted in blue, I'm going to move the ball right up to this position. So this is the new position here. I'm going to raise this object so what I'm saying now is at the ball's position here along the Z-axis, the door will be raised up to this point. I'm going to key that feature too. I'm going to move the ball right up to this point, and then I'm going to have the door close as soon as he exits and key that point. So I have 3 key positions. And watch what happens when I move the ball along the scene. See, the ball isn't currently animated. I'm only moving its position from one side of the screen or one side of the scene to the other. See, it's just the object's effect, or how the driver affects an object. Now if I were to animate this, see, we just animate it using the same methods that we used in the previous scene. So I'm going to set my ball's position here and hit S. I'm going to go to the end of the timeline here. Key that position there too. So when I play the scene, this is how it's going to play out. See, the cool thing about setting driven keys or set driven keys is it doesn't even have to be animated in order to directly influence an object. Once you say, okay, the driver, whatever value you choose to modify, whether it's rotate, scale, whatever, the driver and its selected attribute will directly influence the actions of the driven object. Now this can be set for multiple objects. So say for instance the Mr. X translate Z attribute would directly influence the door and let's say the scale instead. So as the closer he gets, the smaller the object will get, or the bigger the object will get along the X, Y, or Z axis points. Or the like say if we're making a revolving door and this guy or the ball gets closer to the revolving door or the rotating door, let's say the door will actually swivel around and swing as he exits. Now, this is just a really basic introduction to set driven keys, but we'll have other exercises that will include this particular method of animation. Now I use this a lot like for facial controls, you know, like opening your eyes, opening eyes, closing eyes, opening the top jaw, closing the bottom jaw, you know, things like that. Like little springs or triggers that activate, you know, weapon animations or weapon features. So I usually create a series of objects or switches that directly influence how an object works. So that way, when the time comes to animate that scene, I don't have to animate the door actually going up and going down. You can just set the driven key action so that as the figure moves forward, the door will go up and then go down. Of course, timing is a factor, but as you can see here, you know, I managed to do a lot with, you know, very little effort. It's just, you know, getting through that point where you understand that you have a driver and then the driven, and then you can pretty much do anything you want once you get that basic concept down, which is why labeling your items is a very important thing. You need to know what you're working with. That's pretty much it for this exercise. A pretty short but pretty slick set of options here.